Well, happy Monday. Today is Monday, May 25th, 2020. And my name is Angela Hooper-Menifield, and this is your HR Moment with Menifield and Associates. And so I know many of us are off today, and it made me think about the fact that while many people and the jobs that they work acknowledge and celebrate many government holidays, including Memorial Day, which is today, there are a lot of organizations and companies that are open 365 for the most part. Things like gas stations, some restaurants, and things like that. And so it made me think about, a dilemma that I have experienced, maybe not to this degree, but in trying to figure out leave requests. Because what happens is people want to be off work, right? And they want to take off during holidays. And so while our work may have a regular schedule, there will be times when that regular schedule will not operate or will not benefit us because, again, it is things like holidays. And so if you're a supervisor, for those of you who may be watching, I would love to hear, how are you navigating the request for leave when it's clear that the organization should be working, right? As in, you have to work every day. You cannot necessarily just take off because you want to. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find my Facebook, what do you call it? My live, so that I can share. So, okay, here we go. So how do you do that? Well, for us, it used to be around the Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's time of year. And that's when people would want to take off work. And so as a supervisor, one of the things that I tried to do first was be proactive. Now you may be saying, well, Angela, how are you being proactive when it comes to vacation time? Because, everybody wants these days. Well, let's be honest. We know these days are coming before they get here. And so what we can do as supervisors is to plan ahead. Planning ahead can mean different things, right? So planning ahead can mean looking forward months out and say, okay, this is where we are. Who wants to be off? And figuring out also, because typically on holidays, depending on your industry, even though you may have to work, you may find that your workload is a little lighter. And so figuring out, number one, as a supervisor, how many people do we need covering the operations for this holiday? And then once we figure that out, figuring, how can we have enough people in the event, even due to an anomaly, something arises with one of the people who we have scheduled to work. So for me, it's twofold, right? As a supervisor, one of the things we have to first do is ensure adequate coverage. Adequate coverage, again, depends on your industry, depends on your workload, and who you serve. It also can depend on department, right? Because you may find that we're only taking calls, so we need adequate coverage to answer calls. We may need someone on call, so maybe they don't have to work, but they need to be available to be deployed and or take any emergencies that may arise. And so as a supervisor, I think it's incumbent upon us to sit down and, again, plan ahead. We can't wait till the Friday before the holiday to decide, discussing with our employees who can work and who cannot work. Because one, is not fair. And when we use the word fair, and I don't use that too often, but people have an expectation that if it's a holiday, the odds are in their favor that they may be off, especially if they're typically off on, let's say, a Monday. But you may decide, well, yeah, you may be off on a Monday, but also many government holidays fall on Mondays. So as a result of that, we'll rotate them. So one of the things I used to do when it came to things like Christmas break, winter break, whatever you want to call it, New Year's, because these are the times of year when people are out of school, businesses are closed, and oftentimes people are trying to coordinate their vacation days or their days off with those in their family, school schedules, again, time to visit family if the kids can take off, and for many people, Now, if you're in the Midwest, you may still be in school, because I remember we didn't get out of school necessarily until June. But for people in the South, I know definitely they're out of school by now. So this would often be the first weekend that, the parents could take off and not have to worry about getting the kids back to school. So they may want to tack along some extra days, maybe even take off the Friday before, the Tuesday after. Now, again, this is our COVID season, so things may be a little different, but some of the places are opening up now. I mean, we've seen evidence of that on social media. And so, again, how do we manage those requests? Well, certain holidays I would consider high travel, high ticket, high priority holidays. So some of the things that I used to do as a supervisor is to look at the calendar. And typically by March, we would actually try to plan the rest of the year out. And so I would ask people to submit all their leave requests and then prioritize them. So in other words, if I wanted to be off for the 4th of July, whatever days around it, depending on what day of the week it fell, as well as Memorial Day and potentially a Thanksgiving or something like that, depending on the request, and if too many people ask for it, it would help the supervisor to know what was that on my priority, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, or in pecking order, which of these days are the most important for me to take off? And so as a supervisor, then I could take this request and use it on a weighted scale. So for somebody who it was more important to be off for maybe Good Friday versus Labor Day, I could adjust accordingly. Now, the days that tend to be important for everybody, again, with the Saints, it was the day after Thanksgiving, that Friday. It was also, the days associated around Christmas Eve and things like that, if those were working days. Because again, the government, and that was my industry, we didn't always take off. And again, if you're in retail and some other things, you may or may not be able to take off. And so as a supervisor, we have to figure out, how do we create some type of balance? Because those employees have a right to spend time with their family and friends and just to rest, right? To commemorate the things that are most important to them. So for many people today, Memorial Day is just not, sales, which a lot of people see it as, or a day to just be off. It's really important for them to commemorate the lives of those who died in battle. And so again, if that was a priority for them, as a supervisor, I worked really hard to try to accommodate that. But having these conversations with our teams and understanding what was important and what was a priority, it helped me do my best. Again, there's no perfect system, but do my best to make sure that I tried to accommodate what was important to them. But then last but not least, if there were certain days that were important to everybody, I did a rotation. So if you got the Friday after Thanksgiving this year, then next year you worked and maybe the other half of the team was off. But that way people began to know and see the pattern, so they would know if, again, we had to work, and we always did, the Friday after Thanksgiving, is this your year? And of course, I'm fine with bartering, trading, negotiating with people. But at the end of the day, as a supervisor, I always felt it was important that I showed equity and try to balance the needs and the expectations of the people who worked in our work group. So again, some of you were off today, some of you were not, but for you that are supervisors who have to make these decisions, I encourage you to speak to your employees, find out what their priorities are, what's important to them, how can you balance and accommodate the needs of your clientele while also being sufficiently staffed, and then allowing people advance notice, ability to plan, to schedule, and to, rest and know that their needs and their accommodations are taken into play. Sometimes it was more about like who had people local versus not, because some people need to travel certain times of year to be around their family, while others can still partake of all the festivities and only have to go next door because their family lives a block up. And so again, as a supervisor, the more you know about your team, and what I also saw that I loved so much about my team is over time, because I created this as a culture, they did this for each other. As in, they would mitigate any offerings. They would reach out to those who had family out of town. They would do the things with young kids, and maybe the kids would be out, but they would adjust because we became more of a family together in the workplace. And so we all tried to do what was best to, number one, get the work done. But then secondly, to ensure there was harmony and balance and that we showed our team members that we cared about them. So again, my name is Angela Hooper-Menifield. Today is Monday, May 25th, 2020, and this has been your HR Moment with Menifield and Associates. We hope you guys had a great and safe day. Again, stay safe. And we look forward to seeing you again on Wednesday. And for those of you who have been following, tonight is also our Speakers Club. We meet bi-weekly. So again, if you have some interest in growing as a speaker, feel free to go to www.yourspeakers.club, and you can enroll in our Speakers Club. We meet every other Monday, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Monday nights. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.